All right, welcome back. Here is the next part, which I believe is part five in our discussion on the data from the analysis of National Residency Matching Program, NRMP. And this is the data analysis from 2022 that has been published at the NRMP website. Um, I will jump directly into my analysis of neurology related program director survey. And this is a continuation of the previous video, which was part four, and then which, there has been a series of videos. So you may have to go back if you're not familiar with this topic. So in this video, I'm going to look at the data from neurology program directors who responded to the survey conducted by National Residency Matching Program. And as we discussed previously, 154 surveys were sent out for neurology program directors, and 29 responded, which is about 19% response rate, which is typical of an uninvited, unsolicited, kind of a cold calling survey in the real world. So let's get into the data. We'll be looking at some of the graphs and charts from the outcome. This is a relatively small number, but I think it's still very useful. It's hard to get 29 program directors in neurology in one place and answer questions. So I think this is still very useful if you're going to apply for a neurology residency next year. So the figure one looks at mean number of applications received in neurology, interview invitations sent, interviews done, and applicants ranked in 2021. And as you see, these 29 program directors are now responding that the quota they have, which as we have discussed in last video, is I'm presuming is the number of seats per program. So let's say 6 seats per program. And they received 636 applications for those 6 seats. So about a little over 100 applications, probably about 105 or 106 applications for each seat that they have available. And out of these 636, the applications that were rejected based on a standardized screen, meaning that they probably did not look at the full application, was 307. So left over about 330 or so applications they had available to review completely, but they reviewed fully about 285 applications. So now it's significantly down. So your chances of getting invited if you reach this 285 are higher because the competition is much heavier. Interview invitations sent are 94 for each program. And so that will be about 94 for 6 seats. So I will say about 15, a little over 15 for each program, right? So let me divide 94 by 6. So that's about, yeah, so 15.66. So about 15 interviews, invitations sent for each program, and then even interviews actually conducted were about 81 on average for those 6 seats. So that brings it down, 81 divided by 6, about 13 and a half applicants interviewed for each seat, and then 74 applicants were ranked. So a few applicants were not ranked, likely because of some red flags during the interview, or maybe the applicants were drawn, or things like that. So that's a little over 10, maybe about 11 or 11 and a half applicants ranked for each seat. So that's still very competitive. And programs are ranking deeply. They're ranking a lot of applicants for each program, more a little over 10 or 11. Looking at the next chart here, or next figure, and two, again, percentages of applications that receive a full review is below 50%, so about 45% or so, as we looked in the previous chart. Next data is looking at candidates interviewed or type of candidates interviewed in their program. So every program is interviewing USMD seniors. And remember, in the overall review of the data, we found that there are some programs that never interview MD seniors or fourth year medical USMD school, and it's likely because they don't receive their application. Programs are new and they don't have interested candidates. USMD grads, so 43% are still getting applications for people who probably missed the match last year and are applying late. 40% are interviewing US citizen IMGs, or international medical graduates, often, and 56% seldom. Only 4% said no, but remember, this is 4% out of 29. So if I do 29 times, so it may not be even one program. Yeah, it's just one program, which is saying that they have never interviewed a U.S. citizen international medical graduate, and probably the same program is saying that they have never interviewed a non-U.S. citizen IMG. So, one program out of 29 has never interviewed a U.S. citizen, and almost 40%, sorry, international medical graduate, and almost 40% are interviewing frequently, often. US, international medical graduates, and there does not seem to be any significant difference between US citizen versus non-US citizen. Looking at the next figure here, and this is use of USMLE or standardized licensure examination to select applicants for interview. And now the data has been split between USMD seniors and IMG applicants. If you look at the USMD applicants or fourth year medical students from USMD school, step one, there is a required target only in 25% of the programs, about a quarter, and then 21% additional do not require, but they have a preferred target score, minimum score that they would like to see for step one. So that's a little less than half. But when you go to step two score, you will see that now there's a much larger portion who prefer to have a certain target score. So almost 71% of the program either require a target score or prefer to have something. Step 2 CS is not significant, and step 3 also again not significant. 69% do not even consider step 3. Now, when looking at the international medical graduate applicants on these 29 program, and remember, there's only one program that has never interviewed international medical graduates, so all 28 are and else will be looking at this more seriously because they've actually used this practically speaking. So step one now is a little more important as compared to USMD seniors. So almost if you join the required target score and prefer but not required, it's about 60% or so. So only 40% say that they require pass only. While step two CK, it becomes even 17% that say that, or 20% if you add do not consider, which says that require pass only or they don't care. So 80% of the program do care about your step two score. So step one, step two score seems to be very important, as we have previously seen in PD survey in the academic characteristics. And step two CS again seems to be somewhat less significant, but still more than US MD seniors, but not a huge difference to be honest. If I look at it, 36% of the MD seniors or US MD school students 36% said that they prefer some score on it, which is probably first attempt or something like that. And here it's also again about 38% or so, which says that they prefer or require. Step three again is not required by 62% of the program. So very similar data between the two applicants. So they're not they may be slightly more weighted on step one and step two score for IMG applicants, but by not a whole lot. It's important in general for any candidate. Looking at the fifth figure on use of USMLE to select applicants for interview for DO school. Again, I'm going to skip that because I am not familiar with this system. Program ranking behavior. So these were interview applications so far. Now we're looking at ranking behavior and every program, and now there's only 27 who replied to this part of the survey. Two of the programs skipped, so we don't know which two of those programs were. But every program who's answering is saying that they have often ranked MD seniors or fourth year medical students from USMD or MD graduates. Is 16% saying they've never ranked any MD graduate, and it may be because they never had received any applicant who was a late applicant who's missed a year on the match. Now, international medical graduates, again, about 5% which again will be one because it was 4% when it was 29 responded, and it's now 5% because there's only 27 responded. The same thing, there's one program which has never ranked a US or non-US citizen international medical graduate. It's probably the same program which has never interviewed any. And the rest are saying that the rest of the numbers looks about the same. So, interview and ranking are matching with each other. There does not seem to be a large discrepancy between applicants interviewed and ranked, which is good to see. Whoever they're interviewing is the mix that they're using for ranking. Now, the data, we have looked at this data for general over all specialties, all program directors' response, which was probably more reliable information, but now we have this data only for those 29 responders who were neurology program directors. And again, step one score seems to be the most important characteristic. Everyone almost, I will say, 28 out of 29 is saying step one score is important. MSP is important. Step two CK score is important. Same thing that we have seen in general, but the percentages seems to be larger as compared to overall, meaning that maybe outside of neurology, there were some programs who said step one, step two scores are important, but not that important. But here we're seeing a unanimous agreement that step one and two scores and MSPE seems to be extremely useful information. Grades in all the required clerkships are still important, although it seems to have dipped as compared to overall because probably internal medicine and family medicine has been taken out. Failed attempts at USMLE is significant, seems like more significant than others, and it may be because there are more programs that are interviewing international medical graduates and they care about that. Class ranking seems to be important. Grades in clerkship and preferred specialty seems to be an important factor by almost three-fourths of these 29 program directors. And then again, awards, honors in clerkship and preferred specialty also seems to be about a significant comes by three-fourths of the program directors. They feel this is important. And then everything else is low, just like we have talked about before, medical school reputation, step three scores is not considered very important. Now, the next step will be weightage. Yes, you say that awards and honors is important. The three-fourths are saying that they're important, but how important on a scale of 1 to 5? 5 being extremely important, of course, and 1 being not that important. And here you're seeing, the similar trend we saw before, maybe slightly amplified. That step one score, although is considered important by everyone, almost unanimously, the weightage is somewhat lower. They do look at it, but they don't think this is end all be all. But remember, a lot of programs have a preferred or required target score for step one. So although weightage is only 3.7, but that may be a critical hurdle or a gateway to get into for an interview selection or review of the full detailed application. MSP has really shot up to be a high score, just like we've seen before, maybe slightly even more. But then other specialties, step two again is considered less weightage, but again, these one seems to be more of a gatekeeper of your application review rather than a final selection criteria for interview invitation. Let's see, failed attempt seems to be highly weighted. And again, this is my impression is that if you multiply this weightage by the percentage of a failed attempt USMLE, which is very high, this might be close second to MSPE in terms of significance. But as I've said before in my previous video, MSPE seems to be the single most important factor, which has the clerkship director's summary and your performance evaluation summaries in all your rotation. Let's see, class ranking and quartile seems to be important. Let's look at anything that's above 4. Consistency of grades during your multiple clerkships is important. Medical school accreditation status is important. Medical school reputation is important. Although, it is being given high weightage. Few program directors thought that was important. Less than, almost 30%. So 1/3 or so, a little less than third of the program director thought this was important, and but they are probably giving it a lot of weightage when they look at it. Very good. Let's look at the personal characteristics next in terms of inviting for interview. And as you can see that letters of recommendation is the most important factor matched by perceived commitment to specialty. So I previously discussed before that the commitment to specialty, in my sense, is probably one of the most important personal character after academic character, which is MSPE. And letters of recommendation, although again, everybody's seeing that these are important. Previously, where we saw that they were not as important and the weightage was very low. But in neurology, these letters might be more important. Let's see at the weightage later on. Let's see what else is considered important. Personal statement, diversity characteristics, having overcome some significant obstacles like we've seen before, professionalism and ethics. And then things fall behind that, I think. Leadership qualities, again, these are kind of things that you will see within the sense of personal statement and diversity and letters of recommendation. Prior knowledge of applicant helps. So if someone has done any attachment, rotation, or observership, that seems to be considered useful by about three-fourths of the program directors who responded for neurology. And overall requirement of an interest in academic area is not important. So you don't I have to say that I'm going to go and teach in a university or do research or something like that. Visa status is considered now that is considered valuable by very few people, almost a quarter, 24%. And the ability to work legally without visa is considered not a decision factor, although of course, practically speaking, they'll be useful for later on. Now, these two I expect high weightages because these are practical issues, and program director will have trouble getting the resident in on starting on time if there are any issues like that. So let's look at the weightages next. And again, letter of recommendation now are getting really high weightage. So this combination of almost everyone thinking that these are important and then giving high weightage to it is slightly, or I think significantly different than overall data of 1,000 plus program directors. So in neurology, letters of recommendation surprisingly seem to be very important, which did surprise me. I wasn't expecting it. Personal statement is important, diversity character, and then perceived commitment to specialties. I said 4.3, really high weightage, and if you multiply it with number of program directors, it's again 93.1. So it's even uh, slightly better or more important overall if you combine the weightage with number of program directors than the letter of recommendation. But what else? Which message of a four will be professionalism and ethics? And of course, letters of recommendation will be looked at for this question about professionalism and ethics. Perceived interest in the program, leadership quality seems to be have a very high weight, and visa status has a very high weight, as I expected, right? And visa status. And then another surprisingly is the NRMP flag for match violation, although very few program directors thought that this was important in terms of interview invitation, but whoever thought that it was important really gave it a huge weightage and significance. So, letters of recommendation, perceived commitment to specialty, that, how desperately someone wants to go into neurology and then professional ethics and leadership that will come out of the letters and personal interaction, and maybe in personal statement you can highlight it. Now the data changes slightly because we're looking at the same academic performance characteristics, but their role or perceived value in whom to rank. And now still MSP and step one score and step two skill score are high, but less program directors are convinced that they are as useful as before. Class ranking is there. Any failed attempt has now gone up in terms of their significance. So for interview may not be important, but for ranking it is considered definitely important. Grades in clerkship and preferred specialty seems to be important in terms of ranking, and then other things become less important. Again, step three score is not important. Medical school reputation is less important. Accreditation status is less important, and so on and so forth. Honors and awards and honors of collection preferred specialty are considered important by less or less than half of program directors. And their weightages in step one score, again, low weightage, but MSPE has a huge weightage in terms of its value in ranking someone for program list. Class rank seems to be important. Failed attempt in USMLE seems to gain a significance, huge significance in terms of its value in ranking someone. Grades in required clerkships and then grades in preferred specialty clerkship seems to be less important as compared to overall grades, and consistency of the grade seems to be more important overall. Um, and another significance was now medical school accreditation status. If you're ranking someone, of course, you want to make sure it's accredited. Step three seems to have slightly more weightage, but again, not many program directors are convinced that this is important for ranking. And next, let's look at the personal characteristics of applicants in terms of ranking. Interpersonal skill, again, has gone up very high. Interactions with the faculty, feedback from current residents, and interaction with the house staff during interview visit. And these are the exact four we looked at before that every program thinks that this is very valuable, not just neurology. Perceived commitment to specialty seems to be very important. In neurology, as we saw previously, it is not only important for inviting for interview, but also for being ranked. Letters of recommendation in specialty seems to be important. Perceived interest is considered important, but not unanimously, but more than half people think. Personal statement seems to be more important, and personal quality seems to be important by more of the program directors. And then many of those other things are not as important as before for ranking. Visa status is not considered important by most of the program directors for ranking. However, let's see what the weightage is for those 7% who think it is important. And and here is the weightages, and you will see the off the chart are the interpersonal skills, interactions with faculty during interview, feedback from current residents, and interactions with the house staff. So again, all of these are interpersonal skills. So overall, with the faculty, with the residents, and with the staff and coordinators. So extremely important. Perceived commitment to specialty, again, very heavily weighted. Letters of recommendation seems to be less important in terms of ranking in weightage, although most program directors thought that this was important, but not as important as the communication skills and perceived interest in program and perceived commitment to specialty. So, do you want to be a neurologist? Do you want to become a neurologist here? How committed are you? Do you have professionalism and ethics? Can you communicate and interact with everyone? Does everybody like you? And do you have leadership qualities? And that's it. That's what seems to be the most significant personal characteristics that you can have a control over by the time you apply. So after applying, these are the things left. After you've applied, your step one scores are locked, your step two scores are locked. You have what you have. But now make or break things are these characteristics, and especially for ranking, this is going to be where everything will be: professionalism and ethics, leadership qualities, interpersonal skills, and so on and so forth. So previous rotation seems to have a very heavy weight. So if you have worked with the department before and they've liked you, then it's very useful. And if they're not liked you, they're also useful for the program because they have tested you and decided and make their mind. NRMP flag violation seems to be extremely important. Visa status is not, unimportant, but very few people thought that this was important for ranking. Although practically speaking, this will be a big issue for the program. Very good. I think that was neurology, and with that, you are welcome to look at some of the previous videos related to this topic if you have not seen them before. And if you have, then I will follow this with another video talking about survey results from the applicants this time, what applicants thought was useful. Thank you.